All righty. Well, hold on. Let me pause and resume recording. Okay. All right. David, thank you for joining me in another Meet Me session here on the community, Me and AI. So we have some 5 questions, and they're the same 5 questions, but it's actually meant to be more of a conversation and to get to know you. But let's start off with what's your name? Introduce yourself, give us a little bit of bio, and how you ended up knowing about the community.
Okay, well, first, thanks, Stephen, for inviting me to this. My name is David Pullara. I am the principal of DP Ventures. That offers consulting, speaking, facilitating, and fractional CMO services. I'm also a marketing instructor for York University Schulich School of Business. I teach the Retail Marketing Strategies course, and I use AI in both of those capacities. I've known you for several years
Yeah.
via the CMA and via LinkedIn, and thanks for inviting me on.
Wonderful. Yes. And it's one of the coolest things about the site or our focus is kind of marketing and marketing educators and marketing education because we have that in common. But the site's open to everyone. But I really I think it's all those years building courses. I kind of have it stuck in me. And also that's cool that you teach retail too, because there's always something new, right?
Yeah, it's not a course that you want to teach if you want to set it and forget it. That's for sure.
Right. Right.
I'm in the process this summer. I'm not teaching and I'm updating my module, and it's just like, okay, well, we can't use that example anymore. Oh, this
Yeah.
one's new, and there is a lot of change, but I like it. That's what I like about it. Keeps it
Well,
fresh.
and also you and I mean, I'm sure we have that in common with other people that teach marketing is you can't teach old shit like you or like I mean
Well,
you
you
can sorry
can.
you you can I don't think you and I are comfortable with it and I learned that lesson well and also because of what we're teaching but at U of T when I built the first course in the certificate I built at U of T I remember like I don't know, it was a year later maybe. And it was when Facebook and Instagram were launching stories. And remember everything, all the social stuff was changing quite dramatically at the same time. And the course was looking at content marketing. And I said to the dean, I said to the assistant dean, and we were just hanging out having lunch. I said, the course needs a full like review. And she was like, well, if instructors really like, if developers really like their course, they'll update it. And I thought, oh my, how did I get roped into this?
Well, I
But
think I think that's actually and it ties into kind of what we're doing here, where I think as an educator, particularly at the the university and college level, I think people are paying to be there,
right,
and in the case of Schulich, and especially when international students like they're paying a lot of money
yeah,
to be there,
yeah,
and I think for me, I feel a responsibility to make sure that they're getting the best from me.
sure,
I'm not perfect. I have lots of opportunity to improve, but
right,
I think that being able to kind of see the most recent developments, the most recent research, and teach that, I think that's a responsibility. And the highest compliment that I get from students is when they come up. I had a student say it to me. He's like, he said, my parents are not rich. They sent me here and they spent a lot of money, and this course was worth every penny. And to me, that's the highest compliment, right? Because it
yeah.
shows that I'm delivering value, and I think AI ties into that.
It,
How are
it,
you using AI to find new material? I serve on the Harvard Business Publishing's Advisory Council, and
yeah,
so I kind of they survey me and ask me input on how the cases can be better used and whatnot. And one of the things I had suggested was like, let's use AI to help instructors find cases that are more relevant to what they're looking for. So if I
sure,
need a very specific case on marketing, but not just marketing, retail marketing, but not just retail marketing, category management and how
right,
retailers use that,
right.
I just want to talk to a system and say, this is what I'm looking for in this case, and I want the options to come up for me. It's not there yet. We're not there yet, but I think that that's an example of how this can be used to help educators do a better job if they're so
Yes.
inclined.
Yes, and we're already in our first question, but
Oh, sorry about
no,
that. Jumping ahead.
which is perfect because let's go back and talk about personal use of AI.
So
And we'll get to the professional stuff for sure.
I write a blog, dpthoughts.ca, if anyone wants to sign up. And I use AI a lot, particularly Microsoft Copilot, to generate images for my blog.
Yeah.
It used to be having to go through and search for, royalty-free stock images, and now I find that it's just so easy to prompt what I want, and a good enough image comes up, and the images
Yeah.
are getting better every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to worry about, it generates an image with someone with seven fingers on their hand, and they need to, okay, let's try again.
And
But I think,
spelling, it has some of them, they have trouble with spelling and text.
yeah, like I'll say, generate an image of two people talking in a retail store, and then they'll have signage in the back, and the signage will have all misspelled words.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not perfect,
No.
but I think that I love the quote. I think it's attributed to Sam Altman, but I could be wrong there. He says, to paraphrase, today is the worst AI is ever going to be,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I
And it's
use that. I use that all the time. And
constantly getting better, constantly improving. And so, and I'll tell you a story later on about how, when we get into like how I use it for assignments and such, but like it's always going to improve. So I think it's important that people try stuff, and then if it's not perfect, go back 6 months later and try it
yeah.
again,
Yeah.
right? Because it could be
Well,
that the technology isn't there yet for you. And
yes.
I've been doing that with my blog.
Good.
The images weren't very good. Let's give it another shot. Let's try with Google Gemini. Let's try with Copilot. Let's try with, ChatGPT, even though Copilot's using ChatGPT.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
let's use all of these different tools and see what can get me an image. And then let's go back and revisit them. And I think that that's a good way. So for image generation and for brainstorming, I use it personally. And then, of course, the AI tools that are so built into our everyday systems that we don't even realize they're AI. Grammarly helps
yeah,
me with my,
yeah.
passive sentences sometimes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, but you know what? Grammarly has a huge user base for that exact reason. It just works really well, right? And it's not complicated. Well, that's great. So we'll go back to professional. But I want to weigh in on my kind of mid-journey addiction there for a while. I wasn't an addiction, but I sit in front of three machines all day, and I've been heavily into AI now for, oh, I don't know, almost 2 years, really. Anyway. I'm on a Discord server. I'm on a lot of shared applications on the Discord side with AI applications, and Midjourney just, in fact, I did a learn with me here on the community site about prompting in Midjourney because David, it can be 800 words with lens and focal length. And it's so anyway, if you run the Discord server, you see all these rooms of people working, and you can just see this endless stream of images generated, and it was like a master class. I mean, it was more entertaining in some ways, but it also was fascinating because, to your point, the model, even the update from 5 to 6 on Midjourney was profound. Like it got really, really good. So that's wonderful using it. And you're a great writer, so I wouldn't have to warn you because I'm seeing a lot of junk blog posts now from people, just mushy, the ones with the 16 favicons and icons, and everything's just a
Yeah.
little too, yeah, you're nodding.
Yeah, well, it goes into, one of the questions that are going to come up later in terms of, what do you worry about, and
Yeah,
what don't you want to see, and that kind of thing. I think that, using AI in the wrong way is
yeah.
kind of the overarching theme.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Well, wonderful. And yes, what's fascinating to me too is the tools, and just because I'm interested in it, but some of the applications coming online now are fascinating. We were looking at a site called mindtrip.ai lately, yes, a couple days ago in my new job, and we were sharing it on Slack, and it's like a very, very hip AI travel planner, like, but just like very clever. Like I played around with it for an afternoon, and I went to Reims in Champagne before the pandemic, and it was a lovely trip. Blah blah blah. And I used it as kind of a use case to see what it would do in that regard. David, it was so sophisticated. It was trying to coordinate the transit schedules published on websites from Austria, or I mean, from France, from the Reims area, and it was correlating that with events So that was trying to optimize my days, literally using the transit schedule and the event schedules. Now, you know, a human wouldn't be able to do that really well without serious research.
But that is the point of AI, right?
Yeah.
How can AI make the things that would be too difficult for us to do, or too mundane, or too boring, or too,
Too timely, too
too
time, too,
tight, all of that stuff?
yeah,
Let the machine do that stuff so we can focus on value-added work. That's a
yeah.
perfect use case for AI, in my opinion.
Yeah. And also it is, I had a chat with you. I won't say who it was, it doesn't matter. And it was, someone, I mean, roughly my age and experience, and it was so depressing. All she saw was like the doom and gloom and the like, so, the world's gonna end, it's taking creativity away, and then, I mean, and she was talking about jobs too. Look, and that's something we need to, worry about in some ways. But she kind of piqued my curiosity because, like you, it was like, I was like, well, what have you tried? She was like, oh, I tried to have it write a strategic plan for a brand. And I was like, let me get it right. You gave it like no context or no, but yeah. And that's exactly what happened. And then she just got frustrated because it didn't spit out a perfect strategic plan. That's not how it works, right? Right. Okay. So we're there, but let's go into it. What do you fear most about it?
So here's what I fear most about it. You know how sometimes it seems like people place a less emphasis on spelling words correctly
Yeah.
because you know that spell check will catch it?
Yeah.
Or you need to calculate, a tip at a restaurant, you pull out your calculator instead of doing the math in your head, right? I think sometimes we become so dependent on the tools
Yeah.
that we forget about the basics, like of just doing it yourself.
Yeah.
I worry as people discover what AI can do, and as IA gets better at doing things, I think that people will forget we want AI to be a tool to help with our thinking, not
Yeah.
replace our thinking.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds very broad and very, but I think that it's important. Like, I'm fine with writers using AI to brainstorm topics to write about, or even to help shape outlines. But I'm
Right.
not okay with having AI write a draft of a blog that only requires minor edits, right? If you're publishing solely for SEO purposes, fine, whatever, but you can't call yourself a writer if you don't actually write,
No.
right?
No.
Another example, as an instructor, I have
Yeah.
to watch how AI is used, right?
Sure.
Or how it's attempted to be used specifically for assignments. So York has a policy, an AI policy that essentially equates to using AI is academic dishonesty and or plagiarism. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there's elements of that, but the instructors do have the flexibility to incorporate AI. But that's the overarching policy for York. Essentially, is you cannot use it. And I remember sitting in on some of these early conversations. I was invited to, let's listen and brainstorm, whatever. And we had the extremes. We have to teach people. We should be using AI in every single class to
Yeah.
teach people to get ready for the future. And then we had other extremes where we're like, AI is too easy to cheat. Let's go back to pencil and paper. I'm like, that's
Yes.
not good, right? So here's
The,
my take on
the
it.
blue books and yeah, no, oh, yes.
But here's my take on it. Okay. If a student can use AI to complete an assignment, the problem isn't the student and it's not the AI, it's the assignment, right?
Yes.
At a primary level, teachers need to teach the fundamentals. But at a university and a college level, instructors have a higher responsibility to give assignments that challenge people to think, right? Not ones that can be completed by an algorithm. So if AI can complete your assignment and get a good grade, your assignment is terrible and needs to be adjusted.
It's the assessment strategy. It's the assessments. It really is. And that's kind of what triggered my entire interest in AI in many ways. After I left the CMA and I had, and then with the U of T combined, I had spent 10 years developing curriculum, really, like, which is, a lot of editing, writing, and we didn't license one word. We wrote everything, 55,000 words in a course, like blah, blah, blah. So the assessments were rolled up into learning objectives. It was highly structured because I learned that at U of T, and then I carried it into the CM program. So anyway, I mean, my experience was I had all these files. Now, it's not my IP, but I wasn't going to use it for anything other than testing. So David, like when you could start training the frontier models with PDFs, I was like, oh, wait a minute here. Like, I have all this data. I have all these files. So I made massive PDFs, including like a $30,000 Environics spreadsheet. You know what I mean? I took a capstone course and I trained a model, and then I wrote 6 learner personas based on my teaching and my experience with the cohorts. Within an hour, the curriculum was adjusting itself. Within an hour. So I realized that's not what we're
But I
talking
think
about per se, but
that's
it
an
was,
example, Stephen. That's an example of like, I mean, you're at the other end of the spectrum where you're all in on AI and you want to use it for everything. Most instructors will not have that level of capability to be able to do that, right? Most instructors, I would argue, are kind of, they may be forward thinking,
yeah.
but they're not going to have necessarily models to train and to use that.
Yeah.
They need to worry about how are students who are going to, let's face it, tend to be more tech savvy. The younger you are, it's
Yeah.
just kind of a
Yeah.
one of those truths. How are they going to use it? How are they going to try to find ways to make their jobs easier? And
Yeah.
instructors need to figure out how to make the job not so easy. The big in my course, there's an assignment for 30% of the final grade where you have to read a particular book, Be Our Guest from the Disney Institute. You have to take the lessons from the book and you have to apply the lessons to give recommendations to a retailer of your choice. Okay, that's
Oh,
the assignment. You have 4 pages to do it.
nice.
So when I first started putting together this assignment and AI came up, I did what I think all responsible instructors should do, which is I tried to get AI to write my assignment for me.
Mhm.
I did the prompt. Here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
Here's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the output, I would have scored it probably at a 40%. Like they would not, it was not a passing assignment. So there's
Right.
actually a blurb in my syllabus that says, I'm paraphrasing, but it pretty much says this. AI is not yet smart enough to get you a good grade on your assignment. Trust me, I've checked. So to save us the hassle, let's just
Yeah.
say that you can't use AI to write it. I'll tell you though, last week I redid it because the AI is constantly improving. Going back
Yes.
to our theme, right? I
Yes.
asked it again. It wouldn't have gotten a 40%. It wouldn't have gotten a high mark, but it
But it got
probably
a passing mark.
would have passed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I am at a point where if the assignment's only getting a 50 or 55%, it's still an okay assignment. Like it's not able to
Yeah.
do the level of detail, the level of
Yeah.
specificity that's going to get a student a good grade. In order to get that, you need to be able to think and apply. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you, every term, I'm going to plug it into the assignment because
Yeah.
one day the assignment's going to be able to get a 75 or an 80, and then I have to change the assignment.
Well, and it's kind of, I mean, for me, I thought, oh, after I had done that experiment, I was like, oh, I want to go back and teach. And so I approached a couple schools and I was like, okay, I'm ready to design adaptive learning curriculum. And like, David, like, it was like, what? So it's one of the reasons I'm not teaching, but it's another reason why we started the community because I love teaching and I really do. It changed my life and I'm very happy and proud of the work I did, but I also know that there's so much disruption coming in the education space because it's like you said, there's some, we can't go back to paper and pen and filling out the roads. The tools are not going away. The students are using them. And to your point, you're already looking at the changes each cohort you have in your class. So, I mean, it's generalized, but I say this to my friends who are instructors. Focus on the process to the result. Get right. And that's exactly what you're saying. Like, I mean, if it's going to write the perfect response, then you have to figure out how it got there and what you learned along the way. But many instructors will not make that leap, I don't think.
I'm going through my syllabus now for my fall term, and what old school me is basically like, hey, this university degree, you have to work for it, do
Yeah,
all your readings.
yeah,
And more modern me is saying, look, I can give you a PDF, and I know there are tools where you can upload the PDF and it'll give you a summary anyway.
right.
So let's just focus on what am I trying to get out of the reading
Yeah.
And if you're going to use those tools to summarize the reading instead of reading, instead of reading 15 pages, if you're going to read one page and that one page summary will actually be a good summary of the 15 pages, that's probably a good use of the tool, right?
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that if you're getting the key learning out of there. But I
Yeah.
do
Well,
need the
and
thinking has
also
to.
you're in many ways solve the problem in so many ways because you are engaged. It's the instructors that are just head in the sand kind of stuff, which I don't see how that can exist anymore. But yes, I think the next 3 to 5 years are going to see post-secondary education dramatically change. And it was fascinating even to watch it in K through 12 because I've been looking at this so long now. It was nothing in many ways, and then there's some of this wave of AI in education that started spreading in the States, with a lot of smart people. Her name's Amanda Bickerstaff. I've chatted with her. She's got this huge organization now, the AI in education, because look, it has to be incorporated somehow. I just think it's a major disruptor in education, but also everything. All right. So we talked about fear. I agree with you with fear. And then there's the general, deep fake stuff that is all kind of scary. I mean, it's strange
You
when
know,
your father I had to set up a safe word with my father. Just
oh, well, I mean, that's a smart thing to do, right? Here's what I think that goes. It goes back to, as an educator, how can you teach students to think? And how do you teach them to
yeah,
think critically,
yeah,
right? And,
yeah.
and it's like you I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's hard to trust the news when video can be created, right?
Yes.
And you can trust, that's why it's so important to have reputable news sources and reputable. But even there's a problem with that, right? You have reputable news sources, and every news source has its bias.
Yeah.
So then you have to take a responsibility to have a reputable news source on the left and a reputable news source on the right. And you have to read both of them. And you have to form your own opinions by critically thinking about what's presented.
But
You can't just watch a video online that you find online and take it as truth, because that could be a fake video,
yes,
right?
well, and also I'm an American, and I actually worked for Donald Trump as a sous chef in one of his casinos in a previous life.
You know that.
Just a tangent. But and I am, but I've been here for 20 some years. So I feel like an American here. And the minute I land in Florida, I feel like a Canadian. But I go back and forth, Fox News, CNN, NBC, just because like and I posted to the site yesterday or today a link about, look, like you were talking about before, hallucinations still occur in every model. Like everything needs to be checked and fact checked. So, and stick with me for a second here. I have this vibe thing that I talk about now sometimes with AI because there's this fear and anxiety about it. But I think if you look at the reverse of this, look, AI is going to start generating, like you said, tons of blog posts, fake videos, fake content. It's going to, whatever, like anyone who's going to be able to create the text to video stuff is getting astonishingly good. There's one out of China called Clang, which I was watching yesterday, was stunning. Anyway, all that being said, to your point, being authentic and trusting the source of what you're getting. Newspapers may be sitting on a gold mine now, right? If because of
Well, didn't the New York Times just license their media
yes,
to ChatGPT for
yes,
several billions of dollars for it's
yes,
a revenue stream, right? Like they have all this great data. It's a trusted source. It's a trusted brand.
right.
Brands are going to become more important. Let's do the marketing plug there, right?
Yeah.
Are
Yes.
you If you're a trusted brand and you have your own information and it's clean, that's value. They say data is the new oil, right? It's a
Well,
revenue source.
well, and think of it, we've lost all these community newspapers printed wise. But those are still valid sources of local information that should be trusted, and then that's a media opportunity, right? And obviously for marketers. But yes, I see that as a rosy kind of, I don't know. I'm kind of a hopeless optimistic about things, David, because otherwise we just sit in a corner and cry.
There are, and that goes to one of your other questions, right? Like, what do you hope AI can improve in your lives within your future? I think, AI note taking is a great example, right? I hate taking notes in meetings
Well,
because my handwriting is completely illegible.
right.
And because when I'm taking notes, I'm not participating in the conversation,
No, so
right?
is mine. And you and I have both been in those terrible big marketing meetings, like where there's 30 people on the call. I remember I worked on the TELUS business for a while, and we would have these super agency calls. It was
Right.
like 35 people on the call, and it would be anyway, to your point,
Yeah, so AI, it's a great use case, is that I can participate in the
right.
conversation, and then AI captures everything that's said and
Yep.
summarizes the key points and action items quite well, and it
Yep.
allows me to focus on where I can add the most value, which is thinking, not recording, right?
Right.
It's a perfect use case for AI. AI needs to do more of that. Take away the mundane and routine
Yep.
tasks that aren't worth our time and effort, and free up time for doing things that add value. You touched on another great scenario where this whole text to video thing. Well, you know that I do creative projects on the side to keep me busy. I'm working on
Yep.
my second book, a children's book right now. I'm also working on a screenplay. I have a love of the entertainment business, and I love to
Sure.
write. And I figured this was a good challenge for me to do. Well, I can imagine a world not too far from now where I can my screenplay, my words, and plug it into a system and create a movie, right?
Yeah.
That's mind blowing because otherwise I would never have the ability and the resources to create a film. If I had this screenplay and I would have to go and hire a whole bunch. I don't even know who I'd have to hire. I'd reach out to some of my creative friends who have put together films. I'm like, all right, I want to do this. How would I do this? And it would cost me millions of dollars and
Yeah.
lots of people and lots of time, and a world where I could take my document and upload it into a system and
Yep.
have this video created for me is just so exciting. It
That's
unlocks people's abilities
and their
and
inner
their
creativity.
voices,
Yeah.
narratives. Like, it's really exciting. It's got a downside, but technology is not good or bad. How you
Right.
use it is good or bad.
And that's why, and I say this to clients, but also in the community too. It's like, look, especially as marketers and brand champions and blah, 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 all of that world. What are you going to expect? Your government to discuss to do the ethical and guidelines and like, come on, they can't get the subways fixed. Why, right? So, I mean, it's easy for me to say that, but I think that's why I encourage actual human expertise and participation so that we can determine how AI should be used to improve our lives rather than just undercut and get us lazy. And to your point, there's the other side of this where outside of marketing, well, not one side of it, but the impact on medical research and business processes, like you said, that just took forever to do, and sometimes wouldn't be even worth the effort, right? Yeah. I mean, it's very exciting. I realize it's very disruptive, but I think, you and I are both old enough to remember when the internet, late 90s and stuff, and marketers were like, some brands were just slow to get on board. It's funny how digital like was this little world, and now like what isn't digital in many ways. And also your focus on teaching retail must be fascinating too, because you're always looking for breakthroughs on the retail side.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I work as a fractional CMO for a B2B SaaS company called Optimum Retailing. And that retail intelligence platform is using AI to collect data that's in the retail stores and allow a retailer to be able to action it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's fascinating. And it's to the level where it's helping a physical brick and mortar store achieve the same level of being able to process and use the data that was only available to online retailers before,
Right,
right?
right. And with the cookie thing and everything, it's one thing, but to have like, that's why brands want you to use their apps now too, because they have that actual first person user data on their
Yeah.
actual customers.
Loyalty programs,
Yeah,
right? Same thing.
exactly. And that's not secondary info or tertiary, or you have to figure it out. Like you said, that's actionable data. I worked for Cineplex and some of their out of home networks, and that was, attribution and those sort of things. It was always so vague and kind of hard to prove the ROI on a lot of that. But it's another thing to be able to use AI to like speed that up, tests, right? Like watch actual behavior of the customers in their own stores.
Or just use like there's millions and millions of data points that humans just aren't
Right,
able to process,
right,
right?
right,
Let the
right.
machines do it,
Right,
right?
right. Well, or they're, and a lot of the assumptions about them are driven by like biases or prejudice. You know what I mean? With the data should speak for itself. Well, we could talk for hours about this, and we're out of time already. All right, now the most important question, which is kind of funny because we started this as a joke, but it's just been fascinating. David Pullara, what is the best sandwich?
I am partial to veal, sausage, or meatball sandwiches,
Mhm.
particularly if I get them spicy. But honestly, if it has bread and some form of beef or pork in it, I'm not going to complain.
No, we're both Italian of descent, obviously, quite there. Have you ever had the mustachios in the St. Lawrence Market in the
I have
basement?
not. No.
All right, David
Now
Pullara.
I have something. I have a takeaway.
The next time you're near the St. Lawrence Market, I used to work on King Street at Saatchi and Saatchi, which was right around the corner. And I mean, this was years ago, but it's still there. You go down and there's maybe 8 people on this bustling counter and stacks of cutlets and veal and everything. And it's like California sandwiches, only a different place.
Fantastic.
But fantastic, loaded and absolutely delicious. So I have to say that that's a pretty good one.
Pretty good answer, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. All righty, listen, thanks for spending some time with us. Thanks for being on the site. Please visit. Don't be afraid to comment or everything too. We're Liz and I are, we started it on a bit of a lark, but now it's got a life of its own and it's getting some attention and that sort of thing. And we're keeping it free and open and kind of just a place to share, which I really have found gratifying. So anyway, best of luck. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Good luck on the second book. Stay in touch, and we'll see you again.
Great. Thanks for having me, Steven. It's been a
All
pleasure.
righty, bye.